All right, good morning, everyone. Boker Tov. And very, very nice to see everyone this morning. Thank you for joining together in our learning of Rav Kook, a very, very special schus to be studying Rav Kook together. And I'd like to begin by thanking those that are sponsoring the shir this morning. We have an annual sponsor, and that is Le'iloi Nishmas Miriam Bas Avram Alav Shalom B'Shem Tov Ben Shlomo Zichrono Livracha. And we have a special sponsor this morning, sponsored by Ethel Fisher, my Aunt Ethel, in memory of her husband, Eugene M. Fisher, Zichrono Livracha, on his 6th yahrzeit, which will be this Tu B'Shvat in a couple of days. Yaakov Mordechai ben Harav Zev Yehuda V'chana. May his neshama have an aliyah. So it's a very special schus for me, for my uncle to be able to learn this morning in his memory, and he was a very special person in my life as well. So a very special schus to learn this morning, and especially TORAH Eretz Yisrael in his memory. Okay, so this morning we continue our study of Rav Kook, and what we're going to look at this morning is a topic within Rav Kook, which I think is one of his most beloved ideas, and one of the reasons why we love Rav Kook. And that is the idea of achdus, the idea of unity, the idea of Ahavat Yisrael, the love that he had for Jews, and the love that he believed every one of us should have for our fellow Jew. And this is certainly an area that Rav Kook put great emphasis in terms of the importance of loving one another. And there's no question that the days that we're in right now, this is one of the themes, one of the ideas, and one of the things that we're feeling these days in terms of the achdus, and something that was sorely missing here in Eretz Yisrael in terms of the Jewish people, in terms of Am Yisrael, and something that we are, Baruch Hashem, with all the difficulties and all the challenges. With all the challenges of these days, what we are seeing these days is the beautiful sense of achdus and Ahavat Yisrael. So let us look at the following piece from Rav Kook. We are studying Eretz Chefetz on the top of page 1, and those that have been with us for the last year and a half or so, we are beginning now chapter 8, which is Chet. You see at the very top of the page, the name of this chapter, which was named by Rabbi Yeshaya Shapiro, Zichrono Livracha, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. He named it Or HaYeshua, the light of redemption. And we're going to be looking over the next few weeks at pieces from this section, from the 8th chapter of Eretz Chefetz. So let's begin here, and this piece originally is found in a letter of Rav Kook. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of letters of Rav Kook, and here we get a sense of the emotion that Rav Kook has in terms of the feeling of the Jewish people returning to the land of Israel. So let us follow along here. We're at the top of page 1. We'll now read from Rav Kook. And there's really one idea that I want to highlight in particular. Ha'hargasha shel Or HaYeshua. This feeling, this emotion that we have of Or HaYeshua, that we're sensing the light of salvation, of redemption. Mikashkeshet lefanenu kizug. It's ringing like a bell. Kol gevul Eretz Yisrael kulo. All the boundaries of the land of Israel, all of them omer kavod. All of them are speaking of honor, the honor of Hashem, the honor of the Jewish people returning to the borders. V'korei, and they're calling out. The land itself is calling out to us, lehit orerut, to awaken, ruchanit, to a spiritual awakening, uma'asit eitana. And also physical, in terms of our material life as well, that it's bringing back, that there's a great joy, that there's a great awakening of the Jewish people as they are returning to the land of Israel. Again, I always find this, striking that Rav Kook is writing this early 1900s. He's not seeing what we're seeing today, but he's sensing this great return, this great awakening of Am Yisrael, v'hakol od yechazak. And this voice, this sound of the Jewish people returning is only going to get stronger. Miyom liyom yitein omer Rav. From day to day, it's only going to strengthen. Miperek leperek, from time to time. Yishkeh hachizayon. That this vision is going to roar. Chazon mavti olamim. This is a vision that is wondrous, that is eternal. Ki bam moed lemoed moadim. This is a pasuk from the Nevi'im, because the time has come. Ki va moed. that he senses that the time is coming, that chalta de geula, that this beginning of the return, v'sodot yitzirat olamim, and the secret of the creation of the world, al gvul hata'aluma umdim, that it's there just beneath the border, the boundary, or just beneath the surface, muchanim lehitparetz, it's ready to flower, to break through, be'orot me'ofel, with light from the darkness. Mele'ei shira, we are filled with song, v'shikurei nechama, and a drunkenness of comfort, utshuva, and return. Yavo gidudim, there are going to be battalions, groups are going to be coming together. I mentioned last week, and I saw another advertisement for another organization that's working on not just bringing Nevesh B'Nevesh, bringing people, but how to bring communities as a whole to Eretz Yisrael, to pick up an entire congregation, a shul, and everyone go together to Eretz Yisrael. I just, a family member just, who's doing it? There are two different organizations. Rabbi Shimon Appisdorf just started an organization. I saw an ad for another organization that's now working not with people, but with communities, 60 at a time, 100 at a time. Where do you call?
What are they called?
Oh, what are they called? I forgot the names. One of the Rabbi Shimon Appisdorf, it's bringing them home or something like that is the title. Again, I saw an ad for a different organization as well.
They did that years ago in Lithuania.
You're right. Oh, you're talking about Rabbi Riskin and those? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Bezrat Hashem. So Rav Kook says, again, he's sitting there in Eretz Yisrael, sitting here in Eretz Yisrael almost 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, that he's writing, Yavo Gidudim, it's going to happen, that groups are going to come, battalions, that as shuls, as communities, we're going to be making our way to Eretz Yisrael. Ma'avarim lekomam charod Yushalayim, they're going to come, me'avarim from the other side, from Aver, Hayam lekomeim, to rebuild Chorvot Ta'aretz, to rebuild the brokenness that's found in the land of Israel, the ruins of Eretz Yisrael, Chemdat Olamim, our eternal love. Okay, so here, just reading this, you get a sense of who Rav Kook was, and in terms of his passion, in terms of the emotion, in terms of his bond with Eretz Yisrael. And as some point out, some ask the question, did Rav Kook attain a level of nevuah? Did he attain a spark of prophecy? Well, I don't know if we know the answer to that, but when I read a paragraph like this and see the way that Rav Kook is seeing the Geula unfolding, I don't know. It seems like maybe he saw something. He did see a vision. And here we go, this one more line from Rav Kook, and here, this is where I want to highlight an idea, the idea of Avas Yisrael. Or HaChesed, he writes also that there's a light of kindness, mitgaber be'olam, that there's going to be a greater sense of chesed, of kindness, that's going to strengthen throughout the world. Ahavat Yisrael holechet umidlahevet b'shoresh nishmata shel Knesset Yisrael. And he says, as the Jewish people are returning to the land of Israel, that there's going to be a Ahavat Yisrael, a love for one another, that's holechet umidlahevet, that is going to continue to grow, that's going to be a flame, that's going to be passionate, b'shoresh nishmata, in the very core of the soul of Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish people. V'nachalei Adonai yamtiku kol hamirorim, and the streams, the sweet streams, the sweet waters will sweeten yamtiku kol hamirorim, all the bitterness that we've had in the past, all the troubles, all the pain will be sweetened as we're returning to Israel. She'ipadu la'ametz koach, that will activate a great strength, uleharim kol Yaakov, that will lift the voice of Yaakov, be'oz Hashem, with the strength of Hashem. So here we see, this is classic Rav Kook to some degree in terms of his poetry and his language. And the question is, what is Rav Kook speaking about? If we can kind of dig a little bit deeper. And the question that I had when I read this piece is the statement that he makes about the Ahavat Yisrael holechet umidlahevet, that it becomes even stronger when the Jewish people return to the land of Israel. And why is that the case? And is that the case? And I thought Avad Yisrael is Avad Yisrael wherever you are, whether you're in New York or Baltimore or California, right? Jews, there's Avad Yisrael everywhere, that we love one another. But Rav Kook seems to be making the claim here that there's going to be a more passionate Avad Yisrael that's found only in the land of Israel when the Jew returns to the land of Israel. So I want to point out the following. Yeah, please. Yeah, I think you have to, in each case, you have to look at the context. And you're right, sometimes Yisrael is the Jewish people, sometimes Yisrael, but again, it's usually Eretz Yisrael. But again, I think it, yes, yeah, it could be there are times that it's maybe refers to both, or it has both connotations. So where do we find this idea? And by the way, I would say that this idea can be captured in a phrase that we're all familiar with, and that is Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze Lazeh, or Ze Bazeh. Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze Bazeh, which means that we're all connected with one another, we all love one another, we're all responsible for one another. So that is an idea, that's really a very basic idea. The question is, when did that come into play? In other words, when, even halachically, or maybe from the hashkafic point of view as well, when did that happen? Now, I was always under the impression that, well, maybe the Jewish people always had that. I mean, maybe going back to Avram, to the family of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, I would think from Har Sinai, when the Jewish people received the Torah at Har Sinai, that at that moment, and that famous pasuk, Vayichan Yisrael neged Ahar, that the Jewish people, that there was a oneness of the Jewish people when they came to that place. And famously, right, Vayichan in the singular, that at that moment that there was a unity of Am Yisrael. But we're going to see something really fascinating, and that is not until the Jewish people enter the land of Israel does the idea of arvut, or arevut, of responsibility for one another, only comes into play at that time. Now that sounds a bit surprising, and I was surprised by that idea as well. Like, why should that be the case? In other words, if you're talking about a Jewish people, and you're talking about a Jewish people that receives the Torah at Har Sinai, and everybody is now responsible for one another, we care for one another, why doesn't it happen at that moment, and why do we have to wait, so to speak? So look at the following pasuk. This is a pasuk that comes towards the very end of the Torah. The pasuk itself is a difficult pasuk just in terms of translating and understanding the pasuk. And I want to share with you what Rashi says. So here's the pasuk. The pasuk says the following. This is number 2 on your source sheet, Devarim Parsha Nitzavim. And this is Perach Chavtes, pasuk Chavchet. It says the following, and this probably rings a bell. Hanistarot Lashem Elokeinu v'haniglot lanu ulevanenu ad olam la'asot et kol divrei haTorah hazot. What's that?
You have it in the tefillah.
Yeah, very good, very nice. And it also, I think the trup and it's it kind of stands out. People remember this pasuk. The question is, what does it mean? Hanistarot. By the way, there's something else, and Rashi is going to address it. A very strange thing that's found in this pasuk is that over letters, and you see it here on the page, there are dots over every single letter of those 2 words, and that's found in a Sefer Torah as well, and what those dots are. But before we get to those dots, let's just translate the pasuk itself. The translation is, Hanistarot Lashem Elokeinu, that which is hidden is to God, to the Lord our God. V'haniglot, and that which is revealed, lanu ulevanenu, is for us and for our children, ad olam, forever, la'asot, to do, ekol divrei haTorah azot, to do all the words of the Torah. You see, it's a very difficult pasuk, right? Well, I mean, what's going on here? The hidden things are for God, the revealed things are for us, and they are to be done, and to la'asot, ekol divrei haTorah azot, and to do all the words of the Torah, or to observe all the words of the Torah. So there, by the way, there are many, many different interpretations of what this means, many interpretations, and let me share with you what Rashi says. Let me just share with you for a moment outside. I'll just want to read a few words of Rashi with you. Rashi says, what are nistarot, what are niglot? What they refer to are the actions of other people, of other Jews around you, and that you have an obligation, or the question is, do you have an obligation to respond to that? In other words, when you see somebody else that's doing something wrong, do you have an obligation to respond? And we know, hochiach tochiach. And in this pasuk also, it says, v'haniglot lanu ulevanenu ad olam. V'haniglot, that which we see, right, that which is nigla. Again, not an easy pasuk, but this is how Rashi is going to interpret the pasuk, right? That which is known about another person, if they're desecrating a mitzvah, transgressing a mitzvah, that they should be doing, or they're doing an aveira, do we have an obligation? So the pasuk is saying, yes, we have an obligation to respond. How about the nistarot, those things that we do not know about another person, right? That which is done in a hidden way. Is there any obligation to that, or how can we possibly respond to something that we're unaware of? The pasuk says, "Hanistarot Lashem Elokeinu," right? That which is hidden, that is in God's domain, right? We're not able to really do anything about that. V'haniglot, but that which we know about other people. You have a neighbor that's not keeping Shabbos, not keeping kosher. Is there anything that you can do to kind of bring that person along? V'haniglot lanu ulvanenu, that which we know about our friend, about our neighbor. That is our responsibility. Lanu, it's for us. Ulvanenu adolam la'asot et kol divrei Torah. That's the way that Rashi interprets the pasuk. By the way, many other interpretations. You could see how that almost is like a difficult interpretation. Let me read to you the following. This is from the Rashi itself. So Rashi, if you go to the middle of the Rashi, I think I have a little arrow there where it says nakud al lanu ulvanenu. So there are little dots. Now, what do those dots represent? The dots represent, according to Rashi, words that are there but could also not be there. It was a way of crossing out words. If you didn't want to cross out the letters themselves or the words, so you just put dots on top of it, and that was a sign that those words should really not appear. Does that make sense at all? I mean, it's kind of like, in other words, instead of erasing, so you just make like a mark on the page, and that mark will tell you that those words are really not meant to appear there. So now we have this interpretation that those words, lanu ulvanenu, are words that really should not appear in this pasuk. They do appear, they don't appear. The question is, what does that mean exactly? Yes? Did you want?
Put a dot, something that you really want to see.
The dot would highlight what you would want to emphasize. Okay, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the words themselves are there. We know that all the letters and the words, they're there to be read. How do we identify or highlight a word so in some way we wrote it already, but we don't? Again, I know it sounds a bit strange. A word that's there, that's not there fully. Okay, this is, or should not be read. So this is what Rashi says, and I'll read. Now we can see the words of Rashi. You don't have to trust anything that I just said. Now we'll see it inside. Nakud al lanu ulvanenu. There are dots over the words lanu ulvanenu for us and for our children in the Masoretic text. Lidrosh, to indicate that we are to expound sha'af al haniglot lo anash et harabim, that even for the revealed sins he did not punish the many. Okay, ad she'avru et hayarden, until the Jewish people crossed the Jordan, until they entered the land of Israel. Mishikiblu aleim et hashvua, only once the Jewish people came to Arvot Moav, and they came to Har Gerizim and Har Eval, and at that moment when they entered the land of Israel, they took a shvua, that moment of accepting the Torah again, accepting an oath of Hashem. Only at that point, and here look at the last words of Rashi, the na'asu arevim ze lazeh. Only once the Jewish people entered the land of Israel did this halacha of kol Yisrael arevim ze bazeh come into effect. When they were in the Midbar, even when they received the Torah, they did not have that obligation yet. Only once they entered the land of Israel. So you could, that's what it means here, without getting too entrenched in this comment. Lanu ulvanenu, you could really remove that, because it's true. It was not true at that moment when the Jewish people were outside the land of Israel. It's only going to come into play when they enter the land of Israel, because at this time they're not in the land of Israel. They're still in the Midbar. And therefore, lanu ulvanenu, that obligation that it's upon us and our children, did not exist yet. So those words are read and they're not read, because the obligation was not there yet. Yeah, it sounds a little bit confusing. But what's that? Okay. I think it's a complex issue. The question is, taking somebody's life may be a punishment. It may not be necessarily based on the idea of arvut, that you have an obligation to one another. But yeah, something to think about. But yeah, it's an interesting point. So here we have the following idea, and this is the idea that I want to highlight. The idea is, as Rashi says, and this is, I would say, this is a novel idea. This may come as a bit of a surprise, and it did to me as well as I was learning this material, that basic idea, that fundamental concept of arvut, of achdus, of the obligation that we have, the interconnectedness that we have with one another as a Jewish people, that it did not exist until the Jewish people entered the land of Israel in the fullest sense. Does that mean that we didn't care for one another? Does it mean that Levi? Does it mean we cared for one another? There was a concern for one another. But the full sense of interconnectedness of the Jewish people of Yisrael, according to Rashi, right? According to Rashi, the Rashi that we have on the pasuk, not an obscure source, you have that obligation of hanistarot v'haniglot, that you have an obligation to your fellow Jew, whatever your fellow Jew is doing, that you have an obligation towards that person, only once you enter the land of Israel. That's how Rashi interprets this. The Maharal of Prague asked the question, why is that the case? And here we're going to see the words of the Maharal of Prague. So here, this is from Netivot Olam of the Maharal. This is source number 5, 3 lines down in the bracket. Ka'asher, and again, the question is, what is unique about entering the land of Israel that it created this special status of Arvut? Ka'asher nichnesu Yisrael la'aretz, once the Jewish people enter the land of Israel, hayu Yisrael am echad legamre. We are not one nation, the wholeness of the nation, until we enter the land of Israel. V'raya lazeh, and what is the proof? Sharei kol zman Yisrael lo avru et hayarden. Before they crossed the Jordan River, before they entered the land of Israel, v'lo ba'u la'aretz, lo ne'anshu al hanistarot. They were not punished for those sins that were done privately, those sins that we were unaware of other Jews. Ad she'avru v'nasu arevim ze b'ad ze. Until the Jewish people enter the land of Israel, harei shelo nasu Yisrael arevim ze b'ad ze. Until the Jew enters the land of Israel, we do not have that full status. Ki nikra arev. What is the term arev? What does it mean? Shehu me'urav im hasheni. That we are bound with our fellow Jew. That we are interconnected with our fellow Jew. V'lo nasu Yisrael mechubarim liot am echad. That we did not become one nation, the oneness of our people, legamre, in the fullest sense, ad sheba'u la'aretz, v'hayu biyachad ba'aretz. Only once we enter the land of Israel, v'haya lehem makom echad, and one place, who Eretz Yisrael, v'al yidei Eretz Yisrael lehem am echad legamre. So this is the Maharal of Prague, the Maharal explaining this idea in Rashi, that the nation of Israel, although the nation received the Torah at Har Sinai, and in a sense, at that moment, you would think that they now have a full sense of responsibility. It does not become the fullest sense of responsibility until land of Israel. And even that concept that we all are familiar with, that we quote, Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze Bazeh, according to Rashi, according to the Maharal, it does not happen. It does not actualize until the Jewish people enter the land of Israel. There's uniqueness to the oneness of Am Yisrael in the land of Israel, where we function as a nation. Are we a nation outside the land of Israel? As we're living in LA and Baltimore and Hong Kong. Your son was in Hong Kong, right? For a while as a rabbi. Yes. So you're a rabbi in Hong Kong, a beautiful community. Is that a nation? Is that a nation outside the land of Israel? Do we love one another? Do we care for one another? Absolutely yes. Is there Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze Bazeh? Rashi says no. The Maharal of Prague says no. Not until we enter the land of Israel. At that moment, we are bound to one another, right? We are interconnected with one another. We are now functioning as a nation, and we all know that today. Yes, please.
Well, since that was the lesson I taught him last Shabbos.
Very, very nice. Efshar Lazar. So yes, so that is unique to Eretz Yisrael. And here I believe maybe this is what Rav Kook is referring to as well. When we come back to the land of Israel, the sense of Ahavat Yisrael changes, right? It goes up a few bars when we're here in Eretz. As much as there's Ahavat Yisrael outside the land of Israel, but the true arvut, the true interconnectedness of the nation, or of a Jew to a Jew, is here in Eretz Yisrael. We can turn to the second side of the page. I want to share with you the following. Yes, please.
How do we know that it's applying to today? Maybe they meant back then when we were first entering.
Right. I think the principle stands. I mean, it was true at that time, and I think, as I said, I think it's true today as well. The idea.
It doesn't say that, right?
It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. It could be that once. What's that?
Doesn't have an expiration date.
Doesn't have an expiration date. That's right. But again, the way the Maharal of Prague is explaining it, it's not based on on the history or ancient times of the Jewish people entering the land of Israel. That's the reality of what it means to be a nation in the land of Israel. So look at source. We turn the page now, and this very much speaks to our matzav, the matzav that we're in today, in terms of when the Jewish people are going through a difficult time and what it means to care for one another. So I just came across this Gemara. I thought it was a very, very beautiful Gemara. And this is from Tainus, Dav Yud Aleph, Amud Aleph, and it says the following. And I'll just read the Hebrew. You have the translation of our scroll here. Tana Rabbanim Bizman Yisrael Shruin B'tzar. When the Jewish people are in a time of distress, which we are in today, Uperish Echad Mehem, and one Jew decides just to kind of go off and do his own thing. Ba'in Shnei Malachei Ashares, there are two malachim, Shemalavan Lo La'adam, that are with a person, Umanichan Lo Yedeim Al Rosho, and that malach, or those malachim, put their hands on that person's head, Ve'omrim, and they say to that person, Ploni Zeh Sheperish Minat Tzibor, this individual who left, who walked away from the community, that they're not Sharei B'tzar, that they're not part of the tsar of the community, Al Yireh B'nechamat Tzibor, they're not going to be a part of the nechama. They're not going to feel the joy when the day in nechama is going to arrive. I was thinking about this past week or two. You know, in America, there's what's called now the yeshiva break or the yeshiva week, where they're on vacation. And so I saw a lot of ads, I guess, on Facebook and other places of like going down to Miami, and it's yeshiva week, and to the beautiful pictures of South Beach and Miami. And so I don't know the answer. I actually saw a very well-respected rabbi who's, again, he's speaking at a program at a ski vacation this week as well. So I don't know. I don't know what a Jew is supposed to do, but a Jew is supposed to, according to the Gemara, should be thinking very seriously about when it's a time of tzara, it's a time of distress for the Jewish people, to be a part of it. And how is one a part of that time of distress? And the Gemara says if somehow you step away from it, this is interesting language here, that there are malachim that put their hand, I always think about it as a bracha, but here it's not a bracha, it's actually a bit of a curse, that if you're not part of it, so then you're not going to be a part of the nechama either. Yes, Evelyn.
Rabbi, from Goldscheider.
Yeah, no, you make an excellent point, that the word arevut in arevut is more than just responsibility. And maybe that's the difference between what it means, as the Maharal speaks about in Rashi, that outside the land of Israel, we do have that sense of responsibility for one another. We care for one another. But to be a guarantor, as you said very beautifully, right? To be arev, that we are interconnected. Ta'arovet. You know what ta'arovet is? In Smicha, you study ta'arovet for 6 months. Tarovet is the mixture of milk and meat. You spend 6 months on that issue, studying to be a rabbi, and all the halacha that relate to, when the drop of milk falls into chelent. Does that ever happen? I know we study that for a long time. It happens. So what's that mean? What's ta'arovet? What is that? Ta'arovet means it's mixed in, right? That it gets that milk. There's no way of taking it out. Now what happens? Right? What can you do with that? Is it treif? Is it kosher? So ta'arova, when we talk about arevim zebazeh, it's only in the land of Israel that you have that, that it's not just responsibility, not just care, it's that we are interconnected with one another, exactly. So let's read on in this Gemara. So the Gemara says the following, reading now the second paragraph on the first column, Tani idach bizman she'atzibur sharbet sar al yomar adam, when the community is going through a difficult time, a person should not say, Eilech lebeisi, let me go to my own house, ve'ochel, let me eat, ve'eshte, and I'll drink, ve'shalom alayach nafshi, right? In my soul, shalom alay, right? Let me just get to a safe place. Let me kind of block out everything else that's going on, and let me live with some serenity. He says you should not be doing that. Ela yitzar, the top of the second column. Ela yitzar adam imat tzibur. Yes, a person has to feel the pain. The tzibur, shekein matzina b'Moshe Rabbeinu. This is what we find with Moshe Rabbeinu. Shetzier atzmo imat tzibur, that he felt the pain of the tzibur. Now, where do we see that? Shenemar v'yad Moshe kvedim. This is with the war with Amalek. Appropriate to be speaking about a war with Amalek. And what happens? Vayikchu even v'yasimu tachta v'yashev aleh. That he placed a rock below him, and he sat on that rock, and that's where he prayed. Look at what the Gemara says. V'chi lo haya lo the Moshe kar echad, he didn't have a mattress or he didn't have a pillow. O kasot echad le'shev aleh, he couldn't find a more comfortable place. They couldn't bring a pillow for Moshe Rabbeinu, an old man, to sit down and be more comfortable. Elakach amar Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu said, Yisrael hol v'Yisrael shrum b'tzar. If the Jewish people are going through a difficult time, afani eyeh imayem b'tzar. I'm also going to feel that pain as well. I'm praying here on the mountain and they're fighting below, and I shouldn't be comfortable here. I should feel that pain as well. Where did Moshe Rabbeinu learn this from? So there's a very beautiful vort, and that takes us back to the beginning of the life of Moshe Rabbeinu as he's coming to the mountain, and he sees the sneh, and Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, "Sha'alna lecha me'alecha," right? Take off the shoe that you are wearing, because admas kodeshi, because this is holy ground. So the Kli Yakar has the following explanation. He says, why does Hashem, and many interpretations, why does Hashem ask him to take off his shoes? In order to feel the rocks, in order to feel the pebbles, in order to feel the sharp stones. Right? You're here, you're at a distance, right, from the pain that your brethren are in. You need to feel that as well. And then, says the Kli Yakar, then it's Admas Kodesh. That's holiness. Holiness is to feel the pain, the burden of others. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu, who was taught that lesson right away, that we need to feel the pain of others. That's part of what it means, arvus, what it means, Kol Yisrael Ravens Ebazet. Yeah, I'll take Shlomo in the back, and then, yes.
If you follow some of the runners in the marathon,
Yeah.
you notice that they're not even a handful, but
To feel connected to.
That's it. Okay, so this is a...
And my own family, it bothers me tremendously.
Okay, so this is an important lesson. This is what the Gemara says. You can quote this Gemara in Tainus, what it means to feel the pain of others. We spoke about this idea of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh. By the way, so look at source number 3. So this is, the Gemara uses this language. It's found in Shavuos Lamed Tes Amud Aleph. Kol Yisrael. We'll look at just that first paragraph. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh. And we spoke a moment ago about that word arvus and what the word means. Arvus means that you're mixed together, that you're a guarantor, that you're an obligation to one another. Lubavitcher Rebbe brings one other interpretation of what the Arev brings, a few interpretations, but to highlight this, Arev, what is the word Arev? Arev Perusho Gam Matok. He says the word Arev also means sweet. The Arevna Hashem Elokeinu, as TORAH, which we say every morning, that our Torah should be sweet. The word Arev also has that meaning as well. Says Lubavitcher Rebbe, Yisrael Metukim Zelazeh. Right? Why do we care for one another? Not that we have a responsibility and a guarantor. We love one another. We're sweet, the sweetness of a Jew. Right? We love one another. Chadurei ahava ve'achva echad l'sheni. That there's a deep love and brotherhood that we have one for another. Haschus leochiach echad es hasheni biglal shedoagim echad l'sheni. Right? Why are we concerned about others? Because we care about others. Right? Hochacha, hochiach, tochiach is not about finding a fault in somebody else. It's you want the best for the other. You want the person to experience Shabbos. You want the person to experience what it means to be part of Am Yisrael. She'oavim zelazeh. So that's a nice idea around Arvus. Lubavitcher Rebbe says that it relates to the word, the sweetness that we feel for one another. Rav Kook, as we opened with this morning, speaks about the Ahava. A great sense of Ava is going to return. Ahavat Yisrael is going to return to the Jewish people when we come back to the land of Israel. And Bezrat Hashem, we're seeing, even though we struggle with that at times, and especially before the war, we were struggling with that, but something that we're, Bezrat Hashem, seeing today, and a new track that we're taking, please God, from this time forth. But the flip side of a lack of Ahavat Yisrael, of course, is the Sinat Chinam. And this is something that Rav Kook is famous for, where he speaks about if that was the reason for destruction of the temple, so we need to add even greater love. And the Gemara says, as we know, why did we have the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash? So it says that there was sinat chinam, that there was a hatred, a baseless hatred. And the story that is told, there's one story that is told to highlight that, and I'm sure you're familiar with that, is Kamsa bar Kamsa. Right? That is the famous story. And that's found in the Gemara in Gittin. And it tells the story of a man who is having a celebration, who's having a party. We've all heard the story. He invited Kamsa, he invited his friend Kamsa, but somehow the invitation went to not his friend, but went to bar kamsa. It went to this other fellow, and he makes his way to the celebration. He walks into the wedding, right? It almost sounds comical. It's so petty, right? The story itself, and I think that's part of what the Gemara is trying to convey to us, the pettiness of that kind of somebody else showed up at your simcha, you didn't want that person to be there. And the Gemara says that he begged and begged to stay, even offered to pay for some of the party or for the entire party. And the guy literally picks him up and throws him out. And that's the story that the Torah, that the Gemara tells, the Talmud tells us about what it means, sinat chinam. Yeah, please. Yeah, please, yes.
The part that also really bothers me from that story, that whole story makes me so ill.
Yeah.
But the part that really bothers me is he said that the rabbis were sitting there.
Very good. That is part of the story. I left that out, but that is part of the story. And the Gemara says, as that story is unfolding, it says the rabbis were present. The rabbis saw what was happening. There were great rabbis present at that party, and they also don't say anything. They don't respond. I want to share with you one idea that's found in something that I never thought about. The language of the Gemara is, and you can see it on the source sheet. The language of the Gemara is, it says, Akamsa ubar kamsa charav Yushalayim, because of the story of Kamsa bar Kamsa, that Yushalayim was destroyed. The Maharal of Prague asked the following question, and now we can turn to page 3. The Maharal of Prague asked the following question. The Maharal says, why should we always remember the story and remember this incident? This is the top of page 3. We'll read a couple lines from the Maharal in his Chidushei Agados. Why do we remember this story as a story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa? Now, Kamsa didn't do anything wrong, right? Bar Kamsa, I don't know if he did anything wrong either, but certainly Kamsa, right? He was just this fellow that was supposed to be invited to the wedding, to the celebration, and this other fellow, there was a mix-up, and Bar Kamsa made his way in. So why do we mention, and that's like the title, we know Kamsa Bar Kamsa, that we know that it's a story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. What did Kamsa do wrong? That's the question that the Maharal of Prague asks. Look at the Maharal. This Chidushei Agados. This is page 3. The Maharal, one of his great contributions is his commentary. Yes.
Which is the one that came to the party?
The Bar Kamsa came to the party. Kamsa was his buddy. He wanted Kamsa there. The invitation got lost in the mail and made it to Bar Kamsa's house. And so that's his question. Yes. Yeah, Kamsa's not even in the story. So this is what the Maharal writes, and we'll just read a few lines in the Maharal. V'yesh lecha leibonen ma'asa Kamsa. This is the Maharal of Prague. It's where right in the middle of there are 2 paragraphs. There's an arrow. V'yesh lecha lehitbonen. He says you should think about the following question: Ma asa Kamsa, uma pasho, and what's his sin? In other words, why does every Jew know? And we know this for the last 2,000 years. The destruction of the Beis Hamikdash is Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Uma chato she'amar ayedei Kamsa char Yushalayim, that we're going to say because of Kamsa, it's Kamsa and Bar Kamsa that Yushalayim was destroyed. Aval yesh lecha ledas. Says the Maharal, you should know the following: Ki al yidei zeh shaya ba'oto dor sinat chinam machloket, because in general there was this kind of enmity and people not liking one another. There were cliques. V'derech hamakom sheyesh bo sinat chinam shelokeach lo ohev. Says the Maharal, they took friends lachalok imacher shesoneoto. How did you choose your friends in that environment? You choose your friends based on not necessarily who you liked the best, but people that were on your side. And people that would take the other side, people that you had your enemies, my clique is gonna be this group of people. Not necessarily out of friendship, but out of a certain position, right? That they were on the same team as I'm on. V'zeh haya rachme Kamsa, and that's why he befriended Kamsa. Zot ahava atzmahu chaluk upirud. That kind of friendship is not a real friendship. That's a friendship of divisiveness. And the Maharal of Prague says the following: what does the word Kamsa mean? Like a kamtsan. And he says whenever we have words like this in a Gadata, they have meaning as well. Not only their names. What's a kamtsan? Anybody know? Stingy, that's right. There was a stinginess in who we chose as friends, a stinginess in terms of our hearts, right? In terms of who we wanted to befriend. That was the environment. And Kamsa, to some degree, says the Maharal, must have been guilty as well of that. And that whole friendship their friendship with one another and the fact that they didn't bring bar kamsa into that friendship, that really reflects the kind of relationships that we have with one another. And that really is a question for us today. And that's what the Gemara is saying to us, right? Are we choosing our friends or the camaraderie that we have only with people that see the world the same way, that share the same positions as we? Right? Are we able to be friends with those people that take another position, that see things differently? So that's the kamsan, that you're a kamsan in terms of the way that you treat one another. Yes, please.
I have a question.
Yep.
I mean, it's based on what's, I don't hate them, but I hate them.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? It's a problem.
No, it's not.
It's so simple.
It's not a. It's not a. Excuse me. No, it's not a simple thing. It's a complex issue, but we have to begin with this understanding, with this sensitivity, with this approach in terms of trying to find a way to make peace. And this now brings us to the end of the shir in terms of Rav Kook himself did not only teach this, did not only write about this idea, but it was very much a part of his life, very much a part of who he was. And I want to share with you just three examples of in the writings of Rav Kook and a story or two of Rav Kook in terms of the Ahavat Chinam that he had, the Ahavat Yisrael that he speaks about in terms of what it means for a Jew to be in the land of Israel, to return to the land of Israel, to appreciate what it means to have a nation here in Israel. So let's go to the bottom of the page. This is source number 3. I'll just read it to you, share it to you in the Hebrew with the translation. It's actually from a volume called, I have the name of the Sefer, Heichal Ha'ava, which is a book, which is a collection really of all of Rav Kook's, the love that he had for Am Yisrael and for his fellow Jew. This comes from, you see on the very bottom of the page, Rav Chaim Yaakov Levin, which is a son of Rav Aryeh Levin, the famous Rav Aryeh Levin, the Tzaddik Yerushalayim. So he tells the following: Rav Kook nasa et Am Yisrael al libo. Rav Kook would carry the Jewish people, the nation of Israel, on his heart, ubetoch libo, and in his heart. Hishtatef b'tza'aro, he felt the pain. Shel Am Yisrael uke'ev et kavo, he felt their pains. Ke'ilu haya kevohu, as if it were his own pains. Libo haya malei be'avad Yisrael, his heart was filled with avat Yisrael. Upam achat kara eze davar. There was one incident, she'avato Yisrael, that his love of the Jewish people, hit balta b'tzura chazaka b'yoter, that he noticed, that he took note of this overwhelming love that he had for Am Yisrael. Avi, my father of Aryeh Levin, the Tzaddik Yerushalayim, hitrashem mikach ma'od, he was very much moved by this love that he saw that Rav Kook had for the nation. V'sha'al et Rav Kook, and he asked Rav Kook, Rabbeinu, eich zochim la'avad Yisrael be'amet, how do you achieve real Avad Yisrael? Heshiv lo Rav Kook, he answered the following: He dabek b'midotav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Just follow the midot of Hashem, which is the mitzvah of the halachta b'drachav, to emulate Hashem. And what does it say? It says, Banim atem l'Hashem Elokechem. It says in the pasuk that we, the Jewish people, are the children of Hashem. He midah. This is an attribute of Hashem. Yisrael keruim banim, that we are called banim. V'gam avadim simanhu shemidotein ki acheret eich yachol lishtanot. Okay. V'im ben adam mitabek b'midotav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If you follow in the midot of Hashem, hareim b'bechinato kol Yisrael kebanim. So just as Hashem sees every Jew as banim atem l'Hashem Elokechem, that I see every Jew that way as well. That just as Hashem acts as a father to his children, so too I should have the rachamim, I should have the mercy of a father to my children. How could one not love their children? And that's how he answered Rav Aryeh Levin, to see every Jew as your own child. And the way that you love every child, no matter what that child does, and Hashem, that's a midah of Hashem. Turning now to the final page, this is 4 on the top of the page, is Mamarei Raya. And this is, I think, a pretty well-known statement that Rav Kook makes about the way that we are to see one another. And he speaks about different terms that are used for Jews. In those years, this is the top of page 4, in those years they would use, I think, chofshiyim. Like we use, we have charedim and chilonim. I don't know if they use that word chiloni in the early years. I think they called them chofshiyim. But there were 2 words that they used, right, for the religious community and the non-religious community. And Rav Kook was not happy about that, was not happy with the idea that there were any labels on Jews. And he writes, Be'emet lo shnei machanot ki im shlosham machanot hinenu monim me'az. He says there are really three, don't talk about two camps, so there are really three camps of Am Yisrael. Mesorah Yeshenahi, there is a ancient Mesorah that we have, it's Tzibor, that the word Tzibor, hu kolel b'movno kefi anotrikon shalot tzadikim benonim v'rishayim. That the word Tzibor, if you look at each letter, Tzibor, Tzadi Beis, Vav, and Reish, that really stands for Tzadikim, Benonim, V'Risha'im. That is the Jewish community, that we are one Tzibor. Everybody is part of that Tzibor. Aval zehu davka ter ishi. But he writes, you know what those terms are? They're terms that we are to think about in terms of our own actions, never to place those labels on anybody else. That's for us to determine, are we a tzaddik? Are we a benoni? Are we a rasha? God forbid. Val kol adam beprat lamanu shafilu kol alam kulo omrim alav tzaddik ata heye beinecha kerasha. As the Gemara says, that even people are calling you a tzaddik and say you're righteous, you should see yourself as not being so righteous, that you have a lot to improve on. V'tov ma'od le'adam sheyesh shakua lechashev cheshbon atzmo. Where should you be putting your effort? Think about yourself. Think about your own actions. Don't be judging, right, everybody else. We're very good at judging every other community and every other person. But think about your own actions. Make that cheshbon. Ulechatet b'mumav hanafshi'im. And you should look at your mumav, look at what's missing in your life, right, your mistakes, right, that can be improved. Ulehabit be'ayin yafeh al acherim. But always with a good eye to see others. Shuchal be'emet liot sheyesh b'matzponam gam otzar tov hasamoy min ha'ayin. And here, classic Rav Kook and really classic Hasidus, and that is there may be hidden things. You don't necessarily see it, but in every single person that there's hidden righteousness and potential. So when you look at others, see the potential in others. When it comes to yourself, so that's where you should be doing your cheshbon hanefesh. And those terms we should not be using. Any terms, yes, you have a tzibor, but that's a tzaddik, benoni, v'rasha, but that's just about yourself, right? Just a way to evaluate yourself. Am I in the tzaddik camp? I'm the benoni camp. Maybe I need to improve and not be in the rasha camp. One more line or two from Rav Kook, and I'll end with the following story. This is from Orot HaKodesh. We go to the very bottom of the page, and this is from one of the great works of Rav Kook, which was compiled by the Nazir of David HaKohen. It's a very, very large work of all the philosophy of Rav Kook. And here, Rav Kook also speaks about, I think this speaks to the idea of what it means for the Jewish people to return to the land of Israel and why there's a greater Ahavat Yisrael here that we find in the land of Israel. Ha'adam tzarich, a person must, lehilachet, should free himself tamid, mimaskerotav hapratit, from personal concerns and preoccupations. We should be thinking less, as Rav Kook, about ourselves, right? Think less about all of our problems, all the issues that we're having, and rather, hamimalot et kol mahoto, that fill all of our being, ad shekol rayonotav sovavim tamid, rak al davar goralo haprati. Right? We begin to think more about and put more emphasis on our own lives, what's right about our lives, what's missing in our lives, all the issues that we're facing. But he says, try not to think so much about that. Kind of move away from all the personal preoccupations and personal concerns. Shizehu moridet adam la'omek hakatnut. Then you go into really like a small way of thinking about life and about yourself. And if you're going to be thinking about yourself and the focus is more on your personal self, that becomes kind of selfish, and it actually brings about a certain kind of yisurim, right? I don't know, it becomes like painful as you're thinking about all the different pains and all the things that each of us are facing. It says, think less about that. Aval tzarich shetiyeh machshavato v'ritzodo, that all of your thoughts and all of your desire, v'yesod rayonotav nitunim lechichlalut. You should be thinking more about the sake of the nation and the klal, lechlalut hakol, to embrace all, where you can make your contribution to others, lechlalut ha'olam. What can you bring to the world around you? That's what we should be thinking more about. Le'adam, to others, lechlalut Yisrael. l'kol hayikum, to all of the entire universe, right? To be focusing more on what can I do for others? What can I add? What can I bring to somebody else? How can I help? How can I be a help to others? Umizeh, and through this, titchasem etzlo. No, sorry, basem, yes, basem, like basis. It'll be established for that person, gama pratiyut shelo b'tzura hare'uya. Then you will establish your own personal life. You'll create your own personal path in the most positive way. And I think that's part of what Rav Kook has in mind when he speaks about Ahavat Yisrael that's here in the land of Israel. Then we come to the land of Israel, we're more concerned. We tend to be more concerned with the nation, that we're tied into what's happening to the nation of Israel, to Bnei Yisrael, to Am Yisrael, in the bigger sense of the bigger sense of the word. So Rav Kook says, yes, we should try to focus as much as we can on others. Let me conclude with the following story. This is there's a book. I'll just share it. There's a rabbi here in Israel, Hanan Morrison, who's written a lot on Rav Kook. These are stories of Rav Kook, stories from the land of Israel, very beautiful collection of stories. And he has the following story of Rav Kook. I think it was the year 1919 when Rav Kook had what was called the Masat Shuvah, that he took a group of rabbis and he spent a number of weeks on the road as he was visiting the new kibbutzim, the new settlements in the north, specifically in the north of Israel. And he wanted to connect with that community. That in itself is already a chiddush if you think about what it means for a great rabbi, for a chief rabbi, to leave his world of the Beis Medrash and to go on the road and spend time. And we know many of the stories where he spent time in places that were not Shomer Shabbos, where it was not easy for him and for the group of rabbis that was there, but to meet the people where they were and to show and to extend to them the love and appreciation, the admiration that he had for them. So a story is told, there was a night in a kibbutz called TORAH. I don't know if it still exists today. It says near Tiberia. And he was there on a Motzei Shabbos. He spent Shabbos in one kibbutz. He made his way to that kibbutz to spend time again. These were the early pioneers that were coming, the Chalutzim, as they were working the land of Israel. They were coming back to the land of Israel. Many of them were not religious. And he came, and they were, what they would often do, they didn't have internet and their iPhones in those days. So on a Motzei Shabbos, they would all get together. They would sing together. They would tell stories together. Did people ever do that? People did that, right? You can do that, yeah, that something like that you can do today. So that's what they did. So he came, there were a group of people, they were together, the workers, the chalutzim, and he joined them in their singing, in telling stories. And at one point he asked two of these fellows that were there to kind of come with him over to the side. And he brought them to the side. And he said, if you don't mind, can we change clothing with one another? I'd like to put on they wore a kfiyah, like the Arab dress, like the Arab headgear that they would wear, the early settlers, and they had rifles as well. So Rav Kook put on this kfiyah. Is that how you pronounce it? Kfiyah? And he puts the rifle around him, and he comes back into the circle. And he's now dancing. Now he's dressed as great rabbi, this Hasidic rabbi who wore a shtreimel, right? He's now dressed with his Arab gear on his head and with a rifle on his back, and he's dancing and he's singing, and he introduces one of his songs, V'taher libenu la'avdecha be'emet, that we should purify our hearts to serve Hashem. And at that moment he turns to the group and he says, you see that I'm not any different than you are. Right, that you're wearing this dress, but it's a dress that I wear as well, in terms of you're bringing security and how much you care for Am Yisrael. Right, we're really the same. We're really not that different from one another. And he said to them that just as you are shomrim, and that's who he took these guards, that he took the rifle and the kfiyah from these guards, he says that I'd like you also to guard not only Am Yisrael, but if you could guard the neshama, the soul that you have inside of you as well. That you also have a great legacy, that you come from Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and I want you to guard that as well. So this is Rav Kook who extends his love, who sees the best in one another. I don't know, thinking about like rabbis today, for rabbis out of Mea Sharim or wherever it may be, B'nai Brak, and to to change clothing with a secular Jew. That's what Rav Kook did that evening. And this was the beauty of his teaching, the beauty of his life, and what he believed to be one of the great things that will happen to OUisrael as we return to the land of Israel, a greater sense of Ahavat Yisrael, a greater sense of love and concern, of really feeling the oneness, the bond with every Jew. We should be zocheh. We should be zocheh to feel that not only in war times, we should feel that every single day, a great love and a great concern, empathy and connectedness to one another. Wish everyone a good day and a good week. If anybody has any other comments or questions, what?
Good to Bishvat.
Yes, and a happy Tu B'Shvat to everybody. Bezrat Hashem, enjoy Tu B'Shvat.